This is part two of the essay, The Terrorist Inside My Husband's Brain, about Robin Williams. When, the, when we were in the neurologist's office learning exactly what this meant, Robin had a chance to ask some burning questions. He asked, "Do I have Alzheimer's? Dementia? Am I schizophrenic?" The answers were the best we could have gotten: no, no, and no. There were no indications of these other diseases. It is apparent to me now that he was most likely keeping the depth of his symptoms to himself. Robin continued doing all the right things: therapy, physical therapy, bike riding, and working out with his trainer. He used all the skills he picked up and had fine tuned from the Dan Anderson retreat in Minnesota, like deeper 12-step work, meditation, and yoga. We went to see a specialist at Stanford University who taught him self hypnosis techniques to quell the irrational fears and anxiety. Nothing seemed to alleviate his symptoms for long. Throughout all of this, Robin was clean and sober, and somehow we sprinkled the summer months with happiness, joy, and the simple things we loved: meals and birthday celebrations with family and friends, meditating together, massages and movies, but mostly just holding each other's hand. Robin was growing weary. The Parkinsonian mask was ever present, and his voice was weakened. His left hand tremor was continuous now, and he had a slow, shuffling gait. He hated that he could not find the words he wanted in conversations. He would thrash at night and still have terrible insomnia. At times he would find himself stuck in a frozen stance, unable to move, and frustrated when he came out of it. He was beginning to have trouble with visual and spatial abilities in the way of judging distance and depth. His loss of basic reasoning just added to his growing confusion. It felt like he was drowning in his symptoms, and I was drowning along with him. Typically, the plethora of LBD symptoms appear and disappear at random times, even throughout the course of a day. I experienced my brilliant husband being lucid, with clear reasoning 1 minute, and 5 minutes later, blank, lost in confusion. Prior history can also complicate a disease or a diagnosis. In Robin's case, he had a history of depression that had not been active for 6 years. So when he showed signs of depression just months before he left, it was interpreted as a satellite issue, maybe connected to Parkinson's. Throughout the course of Robin's battle, he had experienced nearly all of the 40-plus symptoms of LBD, except for one. He never said he had hallucinations. A year after he left, in speaking with one of the doctors who reviewed his records, it became evident that most likely he did have hallucinations, but was keeping that to himself. It was nearly the end of July, and we were told Robin would need to have inpatient neurocognitive testing done in order to evaluate the mood disorder aspect of his condition. In the meantime, his medication was switched from Mirapex to Sinemet in an effort to reduce symptoms. We were assured Robin would be feeling better soon and that his PD was early and mild. We felt hopeful again. What we did not know was that when these diseases are diagnosed, they have actually been going on for a long time. By now, our combined sleep deficit was beginning to be a danger for both of us. We were instructed to sleep apart until we could catch up on our sleep. The goal was to have him begin inpatient testing, free of the sleep-deprived state he was in. As the second weekend in August approached, it seemed his delusional looping was calming down. Maybe the switch in medications was working. We did all the things we love on Saturday and into the evening. It was perfect, like one long date. By the end of the Sunday, I was feeling that he was getting better. When we retired for sleep in our customary way, my husband said to me, "Good night, my love," and waited for my familiar reply, "Good night, my love." His words still echo through my heart today. Monday, August 11th, Robin was gone. After Robin left, time has never functioned the same for me. My search for meaning has replicated like an inescapable spring throughout nearly every aspect of my world, including the most mundane. Robin and I had begun our unplanned research on the brain through the door of blind experience. During the final months we shared together, our sights were locked fast on identifying and vanquishing the terrorists within his brain. Since then, I've continued our research, but on the other side of that experience, in the realm of the science behind it. 3 months after Robin's death, the autopsy report was finally ready for review. When the forensic pathologist and coroner's deputy asked if I was surprised by the diffuse LBD pathology, I said absolutely not, even though I had no idea what it meant at the time. The mere fact that something had invaded nearly every region of my husband's brain made perfect sense to me. In the year that followed, I set out to expand my view and understanding LBD, and I met with medical professionals who had reviewed Robin's last 2 years of medical records, the coroner's report, and the brain scans. Their reactions were all the same, that Robin's was one of the worst LBD pathologies they had seen, and that there was nothing else anyone could have done. Our entire medical team was on the right track, and we would have gotten there eventually. In fact, we were probably close. But would having a diagnosis while he was alive really have made a difference when there was no cure? We will never know the answer to this. I'm not convinced that the knowledge would have done much more than prolong Robin's agony, while he would surely become one of the most famous test tube subjects of new medicine and ongoing medical trials, even if we experience some level of comfort in knowing the name and fleeting hope from temporary comfort with medications. The terrorist was still going to kill him. There is no cure, and Robin's steep and rapid decline was assured. The massive proliferation of Lewy bodies throughout his brain had done so much damage to neurons and neurotransmitters that, in fact, you could say he had chemical warfare in his brain. One professional stated, "It was as if he had cancer throughout every organ of his body. The key problem seemed to be that no one could correctly interpret Robin's symptoms in time. I was driven to learn everything I could about the disease that I finally had the name of. Some of what I learned surprised me. One neuropathologist described LBD and PD as being at opposite ends of the disease spectrum. That spectrum is based on something they share in common, the presence of Lewy bodies, the unnatural clumping of the normal protein, a nuclein, within a synuclein, within brain neurons. I was also surprised to learn that a person is diagnosed with LBD versus PD, depending on which symptoms are present first. After months and months, I was finally able to be specific about Robin's disease. Clinically, he had Parkinson's disease, but pathologically, he had diffuse LBD. The predominant symptom Robin had were not physical. The pathology more than backed that up. However you look at it, the presence of Lewy bodies took his life. The journey Robin and I were on together has led me to knowing the American Academy of Neurology and other groups of doctors. It had led me to discover the American Brain Foundation, where I now serve on the board of directors. This is where you come into the story. Hopefully, from this sharing of our experience, you will be inspired to turn Robin's suffering into something meaningful through your work and wisdom. It is my belief that when healing comes out of Robin's experience, he will not have battled and died in vain. You are uniquely positioned to help with this. I know you have accomplished much already in the areas of research and discovery towards cures in brain disease, and I am sure at times the progress has felt painfully slow. Do not give up. Trust that a cascade of cures and discovery is imminent in all areas of the brain disease, and you will be part of making that happen. If only Robin could have met you, he would have loved you, not just because he was a genius and enjoyed science and discovery, but because he would have found a lot of material within your work to use in entertaining his audiences, including the troops. In fact, the most repeat character role he played throughout his career was a doctor, albeit different forms of practice.